Avoid the Google Aid. I'm sitting here with someone very special, Penny Wilson. She's special because she took care of my little dog Moose, who may make an appearance, we never know. She is a pet stylista. She is the pet stylista. So I'd like to introduce you to Penny. We're just going to have a short conversation so you'll get to know Penny a little bit better, and we'll both get to know her better. So welcome, Penny.
Hello.
And you moved here from where, did you tell me?
Well, I grew up in Rancho Cordova, but lived away most of my adult life and moved around quite a bit. Most recently, I lived in Manhattan for a year, and before that, I was overseas in the Middle East.
Where in the Middle East?
I was in Abu Dhabi, then Karachi, Pakistan, then Dubai, and then Muscat, Oman, which people are just now, I think, really becoming aware of. And I lived in Oman the longest for 4 years. And then on my way back to the US, my goal was always to live in Manhattan for a year at least. I would have liked to have stayed longer, but that's all I could afford. And then back to Sacramento, where I grew up.
What took you to the Middle East, and why were you moving around so much?
Well, I was an interior designer, and I had my own business for over 10 years, and things kind of went belly up. And so I was told by a friend who was living in Abu Dhabi, his wife was a landscape architect, and that there was a lot of development and growth over there because they're a third world country and developing country. And so I went over there and stayed with them and looked for work and stayed for 6 years.
You told me earlier that when you were living in Rancho Cordova, you decided you wanted to move to a bigger city, and you did that. You went to Los Angeles,
yes,
I think you said.
Yes, right smack downtown.
Do you consider that especially brave that you were able to make that move? You were 18, I think, at the time?
Yeah, I think some of it was probably naive to what dangers there might be or what could be scary about it, but I just did it, and it seems to just kind of be the way I do things. Even just moving to the Middle East, people thought I was crazy, but I just, figured just do it, and
you
do.
You said people thought you were crazy when you moved. So how do you? Very few people could then buck their peer group the way you did and say, well, I'm doing this because it's what I want to. What did you learn from that? How did you find the inner core to do that?
Well, I think sometimes it comes out of desperation of just making things lemonade out of lemons, I guess. My business went bad. It was going to be too difficult to start from scratch in the United States, and I just saw it as an exciting opportunity. I hadn't really traveled much, and my friends were living there, so how bad could it be? I mean, I knew it wasn't restrictive like Saudi Arabia. I did ask some questions at least. In Saudi Arabia, women can't drive, they can't be in a car with a man that's not a relative or their husband, and I knew at least that much, and that I wasn't going to have to wear an abaya. So to me, those were the important things, and I just
how about the practical things like language? And you had friends living over there, that helped. But yeah, how about the language? How did you communicate with people?
Well, English was the primary common language, and what I learned living there is that people lived there from all over the world. And for instance, the Brits colonized, and most of them never even came home. Lived generation after generation in the countries that they colonized. And so English amongst the educated people, it's pretty easy to go anywhere and find someone that speaks English. So it wasn't that bad.
So would you recommend your life path to someone younger? I mean, it sounds to me like you're a pretty brave woman, that you lived your life the way you live your life the way you want to live it.
Yeah, in fact, it's interesting because the first job interview I had in Abu Dhabi was from a man that really had no intention of hiring me, but wanted to meet a middle-aged woman that American woman who would just come over there and work. It was clear. In fact, he outright told me I had to meet you. But, you know, I encourage young people, particularly before you settle down in your life, to go out into the world. I mean, even if you feel that your hometown is where you want to spend the rest of your life and be near your family, go out and experience the world. I mean, you know, I was very American-centric, thought that Shell gas station was American, that Baskin and Robbins was American. You know, Shell is, I think, from Denmark or somewhere other than the U.S., and Baskin and Robbins and Dunkin' Donuts are Canadian. So, you know, you realize that we're not the end-all and the creators of everything good. And it's just an amazing, and you have more compassion, I think I do, have more compassion for other cultures and understanding. It may not be the way I want to live or agree with every part of it, but I also don't agree with every part of our society. You know? So
you've traveled, you say you advise young people. You're not a teenager anymore, but do you still want to travel? Or if so, where do you have anything planned in the near future?
Well, I definitely want to travel more. I would like to have even stayed there longer, because it's so much easier to travel when you're in the Middle East, because it really is the middle. It's so close to other countries. And I do want to travel more. As far as living abroad, I guess, is that what I encourage young people, just like I said, before you settle into your life and buy a house and have children, which then you're not going to be as apt to go. You know, if you have an opportunity to live abroad, or even just somewhere outside of where you grew up, even living in the Middle East or the Midwest or New York or somewhere, you know, to go before you settle into your responsibilities, that then you aren't as apt to go and be adventurous. But definitely for travel, Americans are criticized for not having passports and traveling, but I mean, I would also explain that, you know, we live in a country that's as big as parts of the world, and so the expense of traveling, the time to get, even just to get to Europe, and we get 2 weeks vacation. I mean, over there, beginning employment, you get 21 days minimum.
Wow.
So it's different.
That's really a good point, that and America has a lot of different cultures also that you can explore. So you really don't need to travel only outside the country. I'm with you. I love traveling everywhere. And foreign countries are more interesting to me than our country, because in spite of different cultures, we're still relatively a unified people. We have one language, for example, and it's fun to see the various cultures here or anywhere. And if you only have time for traveling in America, definitely do that. I agree with you. You said you went to the Middle East in order to study or work in fashion or interior design. Did you do interior design over there? And how did that work out for you?
Yeah, I worked for companies. A lot of people think of interior design and think of home decoration, but I worked for, the first job I got was a job that took me to Karachi, Pakistan, and it was the renovation of a hotel that was owned by a family, and I did the interior construction management. So I was there for a year and lived on the grounds with the family near their home, and so that was an amazing experience. And then I got a job in Oman, which was working for a developer. So basically a developer went in and built a whole new city, a whole new community, and housing, golf course, hotels, restaurants, apartments, single family homes. So I was the in-house designer to help with all of that. So yeah, I did interior design and brought the Western experience and culture, not culture, but the experience is what they need. Their people are going to school, but they don't have the management experience. So mentoring their young people, and also, like I said, bringing our construction techniques and quality and all of that to these other developing countries.
So yeah, I'm just really impressed that here at 18 you make this move from Rancho Cordova to Los Angeles, and you make moves to the Middle East. You're an interior designer, and now here you are in Oak Park, Sacramento, doing pet grooming.
I know.
How did that transition occur? I think that's pretty interesting.
Well, when I was in the Middle East, I always tell people they have 1 foot in the 50s and 1 foot in the 20th, in our century. They have high-rise buildings, freeways, modern cars, but socially the kids are still sitting in the parents' lap while they're driving, and they don't have SPCA and things like that. So there's animals, dogs and cats running in the streets, literally living in packs. And so I got very into rescue and spent the 3-4 years I was in Oman fostering and finding homes for strays that we would find on the street. So I really became passionate for animals and dogs, particularly, and cats. And then when I was looking at the economy was starting to affect over in the Middle East as well. Things were slowing down, the money was dwindling. And so the writing was on the wall that my job probably would end up being phased out fairly soon. And I had to start thinking about what my next step in life was going to be. Am I going to try to find another job in the Middle East? Am I going to go back to the States? And if I go back to the States, the reality of trying to find a management interior design job, it would be very difficult and competitive. So I started thinking about what I would want to do next. And I was on a trip to Manhattan on my way. I would always stop in Manhattan on my way back to California on visits, and I kept walking by these grooming schools. There were 2 grooming schools that were within a few blocks of where I was staying on this particular trip. And then I would walk by, of course, grooming salons and pet store, supply stores, boutiques, and I just started thinking, I've got this passion for animals now. I'm a creative kind of person. And so I started doing some research, and next thing I knew, I enrolled in New York School of Dog Grooming and gave my notice and decided to come back to the States.
Well, I want to show people this. Not a very elegant way to show it, but this is, I wish I had the before picture, but this is Moose, and Penny groomed him the other day he hadn't been groomed in a long time, and he was pretty paranoid about it, I think, but she got him calmed down, and I think she did a terrific job. She's become very popular in Oak Park, don't you think? It's been a good location for you?
Yeah, people have been amazed. You know, it's just such a community environment, and they want to support local businesses, so there's been a good support for that, of people wanting to come to a small business. And I think that I'm hoping that my love for the animals shows, and I try to make everything as pleasant for the animals as possible. So.
And you're doing a lot on neighborhood community websites, and why are you so involved in the community?
Well, I've always also been real volunteer oriented. That's always been in my blood. I was a candy striper at 16, and from then on I've just always done volunteer work. And so at this point in my life with starting a business, I don't have as much energy as I used to. I used to juggle 5 plates, and now I feel like I can only juggle 3. But you know, normally I would be on boards and doing all those kinds of things. Now, to me, if I can just do things in the community, I groom for the shelter for free, and just rescued a couple dogs this morning that were running around on my way over here. So I try to give back in smaller ways that I can. So being a part of the community is.
We're going to wind up soon, but tell me about that. You rescued 2 dogs on your way over here to start this little interview. What was that about? What happened?
Well, I saw this little shaggy dog running down the street, and You know, and you could tell it hadn't been cared for, dreadlocks and stunk to high heaven. So I got a towel and some treats and went and picked it up, and I'm gonna groom it and clean it up and take it to the Front Street shelter to see if they can find a home for it.
While we close, what parting thought would you like people to go away with? What about your love for animals and your adventurous spirit? Anything you want to add to that?
Just that I do have the compassion for your animals and want to do a good job of grooming and providing, you know, a safe environment for them. We think of it as a spa, and they don't necessarily agree with that philosophy, but I try to make it as much that as I can. And most of the dogs are happy to see me. When I showed up, Moose didn't run and hide.
That's funny. I was going to mention that in closing, that Moose usually is not real. He'll bark at people when they come in, even if he knows them a little bit. But with Penny, she's met him. I think it was your first real meeting with him. Right?
Yeah.
And he went to the door. He actually got excited when he heard the bell ring and somehow knew it was her he smelled. And then he just started barking happily and didn't jump on you, but he certainly didn't bark at you. So obviously you do have a calming effect on dogs, and a calming effect on people too, I think. So thank you very much for talking with me, Penny. Again, I'm just so impressed with the choices you've made in life, and that you're a person who likes to live life and has chosen your path. Thank you very much for being here.